Right. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I just have a few housekeeping items to go over and then I'll turn things over to Ellen. So just so you know, the library closed at 7. So once the program's over, you'll have to exit through that back hallway through those double glass doors. There's also 2 bathrooms down that hallway. If you need to use it at any point, you can go ahead. Um, and then I'll turn things over. I think that was pretty much everything.
Short and sweet. Is that too loud? Thank you everyone for coming today to our very first presentation of informing everyone about your new rights under Prop 2, which is passed just barely over a year ago this month. And so it's really exciting to bring it to you tonight. I also always want to say thank the Howell Library, especially Amber Carnahan, for helping us bring this to you this evening. We do have handouts at the back that are aligned with all the information being presented this evening. We also have a sign-in if you want to learn more about the league. And finally, if you're not a poll worker yet, this presentation tonight will really emphasize the need for more poll workers next year. So please, if you are not here in this evening, you can always go on to the Michigan Secretary of State website and look for that poll worker application. So we encourage you to do that. So tonight, I want to introduce myself. My name is Ellen Lafferty, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Livingston County. And co-presenting with me this evening is my good friend, Shirley Jackson, and she's also our vice president. We're really fortunate to have Deanna Robson here tonight, who is the city clerk for the city of Howell. And she's bringing her very recent election experience from this past Howell election, plus years elsewhere. I'm sorry, not elsewhere, beyond that, for us tonight. So that's wonderful. We're really happy that she's here. Just to let you know that the League is a nonpartisan grassroots organization. And our focus, our main mission is to protect, not only protect, but expand and protect voting rights for everyone to make sure that they're represented in our democracy. So thank you for coming tonight. And Shirley, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for coming. It's very nice of you to join us. It has to be closer. Okay, can you hear? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Proposal 2 of 2022, also known as Prop 2, was a proposal on the November 2022 general election ballot to amend the Michigan State Constitution to make our elections even more accessible and secure. And Prop 2 passed with over 60% of the vote. Thanks to the passage of Prop 2, we now have many new and improved voting rights. And these rights include voting early in every statewide and federal election, being able to sign up to become a permanent voter by mail, have prepaid return postage on absentee ballots and applications, and the availability of an enhanced tracking system for absentee ballots and applications, just to name a few. And thanks to Prop 2, the Michigan Constitution now guarantees every voter the fundamental right to vote.
So the big question is, so what does it actually protect? And if you're following the news across the country, I think voter protection is in the foremost, either if stifling it or enhancing it. It's a big conversation right now. But what does it protect? It protects your right to vote, but it's not limited to the right. But once you're registered, the right to vote in a secret ballot in all elections. But what does the right prohibit? So this is a real fear going on right now, is that nobody can interfere, no person or legal entity, for example, a business or even a state agency, can interfere with or unreasonably burden the fundamental right to vote, whether by an act of law, harassment, threats, or intimidation. Now, let's recall this is a constitutional protection now. So, can I enforce my right? And you can, absolutely, any Michigan citizen can bring suit to enforce this right if they feel it's violated. And just a side note, real quick, um, a lot of, and not that I'm not saying it's happening here, but across the state, there's limitations, especially for those folks with disabilities. They claim 25% of voters are disabled, and 85% of those disabled had a hard time having full access to the polls. And so it just protects all kinds of rights, and everybody should have unlimited free right to vote. Just a side note there.
Well, absolutely. So the next topic that we're going to discuss in relation to all this involves the certification of election results. And the Board of Canvassers is responsible for certifying that the results of every statewide and federal elections are accurate. And here in Livingston County, we've got a phenomenal Board of Canvassers, and they do a fantastic job. I was there for the last election and I saw it myself, and they follow the law exactly. So we're very lucky here at Livingston County. Prop 2 clarifies that the duty of county and state canvassers is ministerial, clerical, and non-discretionary. In simple language, that just means to simply follow the law. They must certify the election results based solely on the votes cast by eligible voters in that election, and the certified results are final, subject only to a recount or court order. If the results for any office show a tie between two or more candidates, the canvassers have a duty to resolve the tie based on a predetermined set of rules, and they go through that whole set of rules every time.
And I think if you recall, was it 2020, there was a tie in the Heartland School Board, two number 3 spots out of 4, 2 folks had the exact same count. And they had to pull a name out of a hat. And it ended up with a recount, and the correct number of ballots were determined. But we did have a recount not long ago because of a tie here in Livingston County.
It was Heartland School District.
Yeah. So one thing about Prop 2 is Michigans now have the right to engage in true early voting. And that means that they can cast a ballot in person before the election, just like they would on election day. So every city and township, they must offer early voting for any statewide or federal election. And they can choose to do that in local elections, like the recent Howell and Brighton elections, if they'd like to. There were some communities in Michigan that started early voting, not many, but it was nice that they did these test runs. And they started October 28th in preparation for the November 7th ballot. And as a result, about 4,600 people voted early. As you know, and it's a midterm, not an exciting elections going on.
It was good, good that they practiced.
They did practice. And so, excuse me, how will it occur? Well, all these sites have to be open for 9 consecutive days, starting with the second Saturday prior to that first Tuesday in November, second Tuesday. I should know this.
It's usually
First Tuesday. Let me get that out there. Excuse me. And ending on the Sunday before the election. So that Saturday to Saturday plus a Sunday, there's your 9 days.
yeah, that's 9 days.
And during that early voting period, it has to be open 8 hours per day. And these 8 hours can be opened at any time. They can either be consecutively, or they could take an hour for lunch and go home, close it, but they have to be open a minimum of 8 hours on those days. But can they offer early voting when it's not required? Just like they did across the state, not a whole lot of them, but communities did try it. They offered that early voting on non-federal, non-statewide elections. Can they do it for more? They can do it for more than the 9 days. They can do it for up to 29 days. And they can open it for more than 8 hours per day. That's the discretion of that voting agency. government.
And they can do it for local elections too. It doesn't have to be federal and state only.
Mhm.
Early voting will take place at an early voting site, which is referred to as a EVS, which you see up there on the slide. Early voting sites are subject to most of the same requirements as election day polling places. For example, all polling places must be fully accessible, must allow members of the public to observe, and must maintain all voted ballots in sealed containers at the end of the day. And it's important to note, however, that they may serve voters from more than one city or township and more voters than an election day polling location for these early voting sites. So it's important to keep that in mind. And can communities work together to offer early voting? And absolutely. Cities and townships will have the option to offer early voting either on their own as a single municipality with other cities and townships within their county or with the county itself. It's recognized that early voting is a significant undertaking for city and township clerks, right? It will require more time, money, and resources. And to reduce this burden, city and township clerks will work together to offer early voting.
Deanna, are you aware of that in the works for Livingston County right now? Are you aware of any groups that are planning to combine forces for upcoming elections, especially next year?
The city of Howell will be working with both Howell Township and Cohocton Township to offer early voting at the LESA building. So we've joined or entered into a municipal agreement with Howell Township and Cohocton Township in order to offer that.
Might that expand as the elections approach, or is it something they have to
The
plan this far
county
ahead?
did offer to do early voting for a larger group, but many of the local clerks chose to do their own early voting.
Wonderful.
So, oh, that's true. That's another one. Yep.
Yeah, folks didn't hear that. Putnam and Unadilla,
Unadilla.
Township are joining. Okay, thank you.
So what that means, I think, is that people who are used to going to their own polling place for regular on election day, they might end up going to a different location if they're doing early voting. And so we want to make sure that people realize where the early voting site is for them versus election day site, so that they don't get confused and end up going to the wrong place. So how are they going to find that out?
There's a communication that we are required to send by December 29th to all registered voters, giving them the location for their early voting site. So that will be coming. Everybody should receive that from the municipality in which they are registered.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, now we have this permanent mail ballot list. And another way that Prop 2 made voting more convenient for folks is providing the right to sign up to receive an absentee ballot rather than just the application before each election. And folks that live in the Howell and Brighton area, Howell schools, City of Howell, and the City of Brighton had their elections. I'm one of those voters, and I was able to sign up at that time for a permanent absentee voter ballot. I'm on the list permanently. You won't get that opportunity until you have an election in your local. And when you start getting those invites to, do you want your ballot? Whatever, you'll have that box to check. So if you already signed up to receive a ballot before an election, are you going to automatically get this? No, you're not. You have to officially, you used to be able to receive an absentee ballot. They had to fill out this application each and every time. And I'm hoping this is one task that's going to reduce the workload of the local clerks. But now voters have the right to submit a single application to receive their absentee ballot before each and every election. And it eliminates the need to submit one each and every time. So hopefully that's going to make it a little bit easier. Sure, absolutely.
The one exception to that will be the February 27th presidential primary because you will have to select your ballot style. So we will have to send something even to those on the permanent ballot list so that you have the option to choose your ballot style.
What is
And-
the ballot style?
So
What
it
party?
is because it's a closed primary in Michigan, so you have to choose like Republican, Democratic, Independent, whichever ballot you want, just for the primary. And then for the August and November elections, you should automatically receive your ballot as expected.
And while we're on that topic, so if we have a lot of snowbirds in this area, Livingston County, and if they want to vote that primary, they especially have to get their absentee ballot information into the local clerk before they take off, so that they can vote wherever they can have that ballot sent to them wherever they're going to be, correct?
Right, well, they'll need to indicate that, on the form,
Got
their
it,
ballot style and where they would like it mailed.
got it. Okay, thank you.
Look at how
Um,
valuable she is sitting here, isn't that good?
I know, I love it. So how do you
So
sign up?
how do I sign up? You're supposed to answer the question.
To sign up for the ballot, again, you have to check that box on your absentee ballot application. And that's indicating that you'd like to start receiving it before every election. And also the Bureau of Electors in the state of Michigan is working on additional ways for folks to do that, rather than having to get it in the mail, sign it up. Maybe you can do it at your clerk's office. Who knows how that's going to roll out? But obviously they want to make it more accessible for folks to be able to sign up. We're going to provide that additional information as soon as we get it. Oh, but what if I move? Yeah,
Now I can answer the question. If you signed up to join the permanent mail ballot list, now permanent mail isn't an MALE, it's a MAIL, just make sure. And then you move within the state of Michigan, you will remain on the list as long as you update your voter registration address. And if you move outside of Michigan and surrender your Michigan driver's license, you will be removed from the list since you will no longer be eligible to vote in the state.
and sometimes folks wonder, again, what if I am somewhere else? And especially the students in our district that are on at a university level. So this is what they're going to have to do.
Well, if you're going to be away from your home during the election season, for example, on vacation, or a student attending a university somewhere, you can have your ballot sent to a different address.
And once you're on that list, you're always going to be on the list unless one of 5 things happens. And I think I'm going to add one more thing to this list at the end. For example, if you submit a request and say, I don't want it anymore. I don't want to be on it. Take my name off. You could do that. If you move outside of Michigan, you're going to be taken off the list. If you move within Michigan without updating your voter registration address, but then how would they know? You're going to be taken off the list. You're no longer eligible to vote, for example, if you're serving a jail or a prison sentence. And finally, if you do not vote for 6 consecutive years. Now, again, this is years, not elections. Some people just don't want to get off the couch to vote in a primary or midterm election, whatever that is, but they want to vote in those big ones that come down the pike. So this is 6 consecutive years. If you decide they're going to keep sending the ballot, that's a waste of postage and so forth. So that's not going to happen. But also, if you die, I mean, are they missing that on the list? And could you tell us what happens? How do they maintain that voter list? Could you give us a little background on that?
We get reports, we get an inbox report in the qualified voter file that tells us of if voters have moved. We get a report from the county of voters that have passed away, and then we update those records accordingly. The inbox report, that's monitored daily. Yeah, we take a look at that daily. I have a wonderful deputy clerk who looks at that, takes care of that, makes sure those voter records are updated and that we're following the laws and doing everything we can to keep everything as current as possible. In fact, I even had a clerk from another municipality send me an email the other day that she knew that there was a deceased person or someone passed away and she had the death certificate, but she knew that person was a Howell City voter. So she, as a courtesy, was letting me know so I could take that person off the voter rolls.
Very nice.
So it's very nice.
Wow. Is the list secure? And the answer is yes. In order to join the list, clerks must confirm the voter's identity by comparing the voter's signature on their application to the voter's signature in their voter file. If you regularly vote from home, be sure to sign up for the permanent mail ballot list the next time you request an absentee ballot.
Now we're going to get into the whole voter identification subject. And the thing about it is that, did I go too far? Yes, I did. Michigan has had the same voter ID law since 1996. Prop 2 did not change it whatsoever. It's still the same law, except now it's codified in the Constitution. Nothing has changed. What it does is ensure that all eligible voters that cast a ballot, regardless of whether they had a certain type of photo ID, can vote. So,
So the next one is, do I need a photo ID to vote? And the answer is you do not need a photo ID to vote in Michigan. You will be asked to provide a photo ID when you arrive to vote, either at your clerk's office by absentee ballot, or at an early voting site, or at your polling location on election day. And if you have an acceptable photo ID with you, you must show it when asked. But if you do not have an acceptable photo ID or do not have an acceptable photo ID with you at the time you arrive to vote, you can sign a simple form called the Affidavit of Voter Not in Possession of Picture Identification. That's a long name for a form, isn't it? And you can vote a regular ballot. And Deanna, what happens to the affidavit?
So if a voter comes in and does not have their identification with them, they fill out the application on the front that you would fill out when you go to your polling location. That application to vote, on the back of that is the affidavit. So they would fill that out and then they would receive a ballot and be able to process it through the tabulator.
But folks wonder, is my ID the right kind of ID? And what's very nice in Michigan is they've recognized all types of legal forms of identification. Acceptable photo IDs, an expired or a current Michigan driver's license or a state ID. This is the only one that you can have, let's say, an expired driver's license. You don't drive anymore, whatever the reason. But rather than going out and getting a state ID or whatever, you have one. This is one that you can use to vote, except all the rest of these must be current. Only that driver's license can be expired. You can use a driver's license ID from another state. Let's say you're a snowbird and you drive in Florida. A passport or a federal government issued ID, a local government issued ID. For example, do you have an ID from the city of Howell? There we go. Military photo ID, a tribal photo ID, and finally, a student photo ID issued by your local high school if you're an 18-year-old or college, university. And there's many reasons why folks might not have an acceptable ID on them when they go to vote. They might not be able to afford it. They can't get to access the transportation to get that ID. They forgot it at home, or they simply lost it. Been there. These voters can still vote, but they'll have to sign that affidavit.
So now we're into the passage of Prop 2 made several improvements to the absentee voting experience as well. Do I still have to provide postage for my absentee ballot and application? No. It's very straightforward. The state must now provide funding for return postage on all absentee ballot applications and ballots. No more figuring out the right amount of postage needed or paying for the stamp.
And what's really nice that's confirmed in this passing of Prop 2 is that, excuse me, you're going to be notified by the clerk if there's any issues with your absentee ballot, such as you forgot to sign the outside or other ballot, and they're going to provide you instructions on how to fix that issue. If you're notified of an issue, you must be given an equitable opportunity, a good amount of time to fix it. In other words, you can't sit there, I'm sorry, be here by 5 o'clock. They have to provide you plenty of time to rectify that. A uniform statewide process for notifying voters of these issues isn't going to be in place until the spring of 2024, but it's being worked on. In the meantime, just be sure to sign the outside of the ballot. And I just have to add a side note. A close person I know who has suffered from a neurological issue with her ballot signature, and someone I know signed it for her, being helpful and all that. The city contacted her and said, "Did you sign this?" They checked. They knew it wasn't hers. And she explained, "No, I have a hard time writing, blah, blah, blah." And they came to the house and fixed it for her and had her still able to vote. But that's how conscientious they were about it. And that person will never sign it again. I mean, he could have signed it, and I'm close to this person, and he could have just signed it that he assisted, and that would have been acceptable, correct? That you have someone assist you?
Well, if you assist a voter, you should fill out that portion that says that you assisted the voter. We are still going to try to verify that voter's signature. People's signatures change over the course of time. That's usually fairly easy to resolve. I can walk out to your car and have you sign a new voter registration if you're unable to come in. I mean, we try to be pretty accommodating. We definitely do not want to prevent anyone from being able to exercise their right to vote. That's, we're going to do everything we can to try to make sure that happens. And I would say by far, most people have that philosophy, share that philosophy, and have always tried to do that.
Can I track the status of my absentee ballot and application online? And the answer is yes. Voters can now use the new and improved online ballot tracking system that's funded by the state. Thanks to Prop 2, voters will now be able to track their absentee ballots and applications online more closely. For example, voters will be able to see the details about any issues with their application or ballot and will learn how to and by when they must fix them. In addition, voters will have the option to sign up to receive all this information through text messages or email.
She wants me to read the question. When can I use the enhanced tracking system? And how do I sign up to receive notifications?
You want me to answer it for you?
Sure,
Oh, okay.
please.
The Bureau of Elections is working on creating this enhanced tracking system, and we anticipate that voters will be able to use it and sign up for notifications later this year. In the meantime, voters can still track some information about their absentee ballot application and ballot online at Michigan's Voter Information Center, which is michiganmi.gov/vote. Once the enhanced tracking system is ready, we encourage everyone to use it and sign up for notifications. Now, the next one is, what's a drop box? It's not a box that you drop. Thanks to Prop 2, voters now have the right to at least one secure ballot drop box in their city or township. A ballot drop box is a secure, locked structure that voters may use to return completed absentee ballot applications and voted absentee ballots. Many communities already have one or more drop boxes, but all communities must ensure that they're complying with the constitutional amendment by having at least one ballot drop box for every 15,000 registered voters. Communities that already have the constitutionally required number of drop boxes are all set, but they can choose to provide more if they want to.
Questions were, where are these going to be located? And again, I go back to, people have to be able to access them. You can't put them in the back of a parking lot in the middle of a field. Everybody has to be able to access them. They must distribute them equitably throughout the city if you have more than 15,000 voters and have to do a number of drop boxes. You can't all cluster them in one end of the city. And that it has to be convenient and accessible to voters, including those with disabilities. And for example, such as downtown areas or public spaces. And I hope they keep in mind traffic pattern too. It's hard to pull in a busy parking lot, and it's hard to egress and get in and out of it. You can always find the location of drop boxes in your community at Michigan's Voter Information Center, which is mi.gov/vote. And just, I'm so proud of, I think in 2020, our league posted pictures of drop boxes on our Facebook, so everybody knew where they were. It was kind of a nice way to, hey, not only look it up, but we're going to give you a visual of where exactly that's located. And can you use your Dropbox anywhere in the state? No, you have to say, come on. You cannot use any Dropbox in the state. You can only use the Dropbox that's located in your city or township where you reside. For example, if you're registered in Howell, you can't drop it into Brighton's. It's not a mailbox, it's a ballot box. And you can't drop it in anywhere but in your, I think you could probably do Howell, maybe Howell Township. No, it's got to be the city
Not
of.
really. You need to drop your ballot in your ballot drop box, your voting municipality.
And so if a ballot shows up and it comes from elsewhere, has that happened?
Yes,
And-
absolutely. I contact the clerk. We get that ballot. We work something out where that ballot gets to where it needs to go.
Right. Okay, thank you.
I
Good
would
to know.
imagine
Of
there's
course
quite
they
a
would.
few of them that end up in the wrong drop box, don't they?
I can't speak to the township specifically. I can really only tell you about the city of Howell's Dropbox. We do have one outside the building at the entrance to City Hall. And it is accessible 24/7 during an election. It's locked down right now and secured, so nobody can put anything in there because we don't have an election right now, but it's closely monitored. That's where ours is. That I'm not sure, to be honest.
Hmm.
Right.
Good point. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And folks can always walk it into the clerk's office and put
Right.
it on the desk and get your little I voted sticker.
Yeah,
what it's all
every
about, that
clerk's
sticker.
office would have a drop box. And right, every clerk's office would have a drop box there.
I would assume most of them do, but I don't know that for sure. I mean, you can actually hand deliver it. Usually we'll have one on the inside during a big election where people can physically walk it into the building. It's funny, people have different preferences. So some people want to physically hand their ballot to someone. Some people want to put it in the outside drop box. I don't want to talk to anyone. Some people want to put it in the inside drop box. I've had people who didn't want to hand it to me. They felt better putting it in the drop box, but in the inside of the building. So we try to have different avenues to accommodate personal preferences, but all of those are secure. Sure. Yes. Yes, they can. And I understand your point, but I think you also have to take into consideration the security of those drop boxes and, the emptying of them and making sure, they're not damaged. There's, you know, there is. And well, and having people go out and empty it on a regular basis, and having a secure way to empty it and transport those ballots back to the township or city hall.
Hi, back there. The question, I know folks can hear it at home, is that on that affidavit that's signed for someone that doesn't have their ID on them, how is that signature verified?
The person would be signing that affidavit. They'd be providing their name and address. That information would be verified in the electronic poll book at the precinct. But they also usually, have for like a little post-it flag almost on those so that they can be, if you receive 2,000 applications, so you can quickly identify which one of those were in fact signed via the affidavit.
Does that answer your question? Okay, the next one is, when can I use the Dropbox? And they must be accessible 24/7 during the 40 days prior to an election and up to 8 p.m. on election day. And everybody wants to know how secure the Dropboxes are. And they are very secure. They must be securely locked, bolted down, and designed to prevent the removal of absentee ballots and applications except by authorized election officials. Currently, many, but not all, drop boxes are also subject to video surveillance, but starting in January 20 of 26, all drop boxes will be subject to video surveillance, which is an interesting fact, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so when must my absentee ballot be received by my city or township clerk? So this is the very last voting improvement, absentee voting improvement that came as a result of Prop 2, and especially has to do with military and overseas ballots, voters, I should say. And before the passage of Prop 2, those ballots had to be received by 8 o'clock on election day, those overseas and military voters. And now as long as they're postmarked by election day and arrive within 6 days post-election, then they're going to be counted. This does delay the certification of the ballots. It's been already having that effect. And there's talk of legislation that if they find they have 3 ballots out and it's not going to change the final result of any election, they might pass legislation that said they can still certify the results, but that's still in the works. But this has definitely caused delays of certification, only just waiting for those ballots to come around. And usually they start certification on the Thursday after the voting Tuesday, and this will make them finish on the following Tuesday. That's the little bit that it holds it up,
The 6 days after.
6 days after.
So now we're going to change topics here. Let's talk about charitable contributions. Another way that Prop 2 improved election administration is by requiring the public disclosure of charitable contributions. County, city, and township clerks can fund elections in their communities through state funding, federal funding, and publicly disclosed charitable contributions. Charitable contributions include non-monetary contributions, such as buildings and resources, like having the election or the polling place take place in a church. Do you want to add anything else to that? Okay.
We're waiting on additional information regarding that, but that's, yeah.
I think a lot of people, when they were voting for Prop 2, didn't realize that having a polling place in a place like a church is considered a charitable contribution. And yeah, they didn't realize that.
And so the question, I think it arose at the last election, there was some contribution money that poured in, and all folks are wondering, should they accept contribution? Should this be happening? And although clerks have the option to fund some of their elections through these donations, they do not have to accept these public charitable contributions. If they do, though, they must publicly disclose how much and from who they accepted those donations from. I believe the last election, there was talk of Zuckerberg was sending money all over the place, and he was sending money to, I don't know where, clerk of the local, just to fund elections. And I don't know why. And I think that raised a lot of concerns, and rightly so, because you don't want donations funded by just anybody. Again, they identified that that could be a problem, and that if any donations were accepted, again, it's up to the local municipality to decide to accept those donations. They have to publicly disclose who they came from. But this leads to, can they accept any of them? They can't accept any that are from foreign funds or sources. They have to be nationally identified organizations or people, I guess. Any other thoughts on that? Have you heard anything else on that?
To be perfectly honest with you, I have not heard really anything on that. I think that most of the information that we've been getting or working on are more, with the change in the presidential primary date and kind of getting ready for that. We have not accepted any donations for our elections, nor do I see that happening in the near future. Would be so far off my radar at this point in time, to be honest. So
yeah,
we're waiting for more information on that one.
So here we are at the very end. We recognize that this is an awful lot of information to take in, and we're happy to take questions at this time or to go back over any sections that we covered. And just for those of you who might have to get up and leave because this is the very end, thank you for joining us today. And the successful passage and implementation of our new voting rights under Prop 2 would not be possible without engaged and passionate citizens like each and every one of you. If you want more information after this evening's town hall, either to review or to share with your community, we encourage you to visit michiganvoting.org. And now we'll take any additional questions if you have any.
we covered it. Yeah, I want to.
Well, because this isn't, you can't hear it on the YouTube channel from the audience participation, I'd like to have you, could you just say that again succinctly?
Mark Zuckerberg and his wife donated $400 million to two charitable organizations during the COVID experience for the purpose of helping clerks transition to mail-in voting.
That's a small little piece of change, right?
I just had one question about, do you feel that you have enough election inspectors, or how many more will you need to provide coverage for the 9 days of early voting?
I think we are always looking for additional elections. We are always looking for people who would like to help out and work the elections, especially now with the early voting and all that requires, all those additional days. I have applications here for election inspectors. There's required training that'll be coming up next year. I will take an application from anyone at any time. Sometimes I think, you feel like you're in a good position with your number of election inspectors, but let's face it, people get sick, they have emergencies, things come up, and even if they're excited about working all these extra days and with all the legislation that's passed, you don't know how that really is until you actually do it. So, we have great inspectors now, but for sure, we're always looking.
You have another question?
So for the people who say that we're just accepting anybody's signature and we're not checking it and verifying. So like, again, back to if they don't have photo ID, do you match it against like the Secretary of State license or state ID that they might have on file, or any other government?
If they are at the precinct or the polling location voting on election day, they don't have access to that information. If they came in for an absentee ballot and signed an affidavit, of course, we have access to that. And we rigorously check those signatures on all those, on the ballots, the applications, everything. We do contact people and say, this doesn't match, can you come in with your photo ID, or we need this in order to, accept your ballot.
Okay.
We're looking. Clerks are looking.
sure.
We want to do, I think clerks are rule followers.
Mhm.
So you want to follow all the rules. You want to make everything go through as it should. And you also want to allow people to exercise their right to vote.
Right.
So, we're balancing all those things, but we are checking.
Thank you.
Address the amount of people that actually come through the polls and have to sign an affidavit. Like,
Oh, it's so small.
yes, it's
Thank
like
you for
less
for
than
pointing that
less
out.
than a fraction of 1%, like maybe one in several thousand in the elections I've worked.
It
It's
is.
so minuscule. And they're signing under penalty of law that they are who they say they are. And it's flagged with a little Post-it note so that if there's any question later, they can quick go back and find that application and the affidavit and prosecute them if, that would be the case. But it's such a teeny tiny amount. I think I've done 2 in all the elections that I've worked.
And thank you so much for
You're
bringing that up.
Yeah,
That-
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, I think that wraps it up. And
Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you, Deanna, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Everyone, have a good night. Thank you. And we're out of here. Whew. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Go on.
I don't know how this turns off.
I think you push it if they're like.